All right. So I am going to show a few things, a few different techniques for application today also, including some that Malika has highlighted. Because eventually all the techniques that we've learned in the first 2 weeks need to be applied for various projects. Last week we did florals. That's one of the easiest and first things you can do, and also very versatile. You can do just florals all your life and you can be fully satisfied, and all these techniques will help you in this. But I generally encourage everyone to do a little more than just that which they're comfortable with. So today I'm going to go into that other section, which would be still life. And in still life you can have a lot of things. So even in still life, flowers and fruit and vegetables and everything also does technically come in still life. But we use that for other stuff because we don't necessarily make a still life as a painting anymore. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't, but I just feel that there are so many other ways in which you can use your art instead of just thinking of what you can put on a wall, that you can change your topic and make it a little more contemporary and a little more, I guess, all pervading. So we would do food illustration next month, so that you can then start doing your recipes or making food graphics on other stuff. So that will become another application. So I'm not tackling any of that today, but there are certain things in about just objects and artifacts that we never do, except if you are going to do some travel journal or something, in which then you would probably visit a museum, or you will see certain artifacts in certain places that you stay because they're vintage or the place is heritage, and you want to document that. That is when you say, okay, I want to make this artifact, but I don't know how to go about it. So today is just a smattering of all of these things, starting with something really simple and then going towards at least a door to what complicated might be. Not too complicated, because I don't want to overwhelm you with too many things. But let's just see the images so you know what I'm talking about. The one thing that we will all encounter at some point or another is high contrasts or reflections and highlights. These will be in metallic objects. So this is one of the easiest metallic objects to paint. We all will have some kind of tumbler at home, which would be in stainless steel or a gray metal. And this is often seen as a difficult topic simply because it has reflections. The other one we will encounter will be glass objects, and this again will seem tough because we think this is transparent. So, how are we going to show a transparency with watercolor? Then you have something like this, which is representative of a biological being which has a hard shell. So, in a sense, this also has the same highlights and reflections and shadows as a metallic object, but this is botanical. So, this will be another way of looking at objects. And then, of course, we have the mundane, everyday objects, which, if you do them right, can be a wonderful topic for illustration also. We just don't see these topics as worthy of spending our time on. So I'm going to start today's session with first making this pencil. I know we've not done too much of drawing in this month's class, so I'm going to give you a few tips on how to go about drawing this. Then we will move to all the other objects. So the beetle, the Coke bottle, and the metal tumbler. All right, so all of these we are going to distribute on our page. And as always, I'm going to request you to make your page layout look beautiful. So give it a thought. You've seen all the pictures, where you want to put everything. I'm going to show you where I will put all of my stuff, and that will give you an idea of where you want to put everything. Through the drawing instructions, I'll also show you how to visualize what is going where before you start, so that at least you know what to expect. If we just start from the center of the page, then everything else we have to accommodate everywhere else, and sometimes that does not look good, and you just feel, when you're showing the book later to anybody, you'll say, just look at this, or don't look at that. And you shouldn't have to do it. Your work is going to be seen, you have to assume your work is going to be seen in your absence and it should not need any defense. So always try to make it such that no explanation needed. That needs a little bit of thought ahead of time. Okay, so we have four objects. We have one tall object which can come here. Then we have a tallish object, but not as tall as the bottle, so that can come somewhere here. We can draw the pencil over here in the left corner, and we can draw the beetle here or here, wherever. So we are going to keep our objects in this kind of an inverted U shape, and then maybe leave the base bottom blank to either write the title or make similar such objects if you want to. Avoid testing your color in the corners of your page. We don't want to do that on this. So if you've got a rough sheet, please keep that handy. Other simple composition rules are to keep the borders clean. So whatever you're doing, try and keep everything within about an inch from the edges. When you have objects that touch the edge, for an unplanned piece of work, it is very possible that things start going beyond your control. But that just means that the composition starts get tearing and you see a lot of extra blank spaces in between, which can cause they say this causes tension. Now, this tension is not like stress, not bodily stress. It causes a tension in the composition, which begs attention. This is a strategy in art. Sometimes you will leave vacant spaces to cause that tension. But today we don't want to cause any of that. So we are starting from the left, and in order to start drawing first, we will start proportioning this object. So let me just share the picture again and show you how this proportioning works. Every time you have an object, you can start using an internal geometry to measure distance, angles, spaces in between, and that will help you to draw everything on paper. Our paper is blank, so we can work with only absolute measurements, at best work with absolute measurements. So let's say we draw a square around this object. Okay, this is too tall. So let me start from the bottom corner, the tip of the pencil, and go as far as I can to come to the top, but it is not reaching the end of the pencil, even if I come to the top of the pencil, that's this side. So now in the square, I can measure angles. A square is very easy, both sides are the same distance. So this is 45 degrees, and when there was no measurement or no shape, I thought this could have been a 45-degree angle, but it is not. So how do we get the angle of the pencil right? All we need to do is divide the right side of the square into half and then maybe into a quarter. And what we know now is if we draw a line from the bottom left through 1/4 of the distance from the top, we will get the center of the, oh, I ran out of space here, center of the pencil itself. Now once we get the center, we can also then figure out what is the width of the pencil itself. So draw another line. Happily enough, this comes to halfway between the two, that 1/4 space. And once we get this distance, the other side is pretty much the same, maybe slightly smaller, but even if you make it the same, not a problem. So this is solved. Now we need to know how far we have to draw the pencil. So let's say we will make a line that goes through. And this distance seems to be about, so this is just me measuring the distance so that I can bring this square over here and then mark maybe at one third the distance out. So how do you mark this one third distance? You just mark it over here.
Aditi, I don't know about others, but I can see only your page, like your.
Oh, is it? Okay. Um, you do not see that I have shared the visual. Have you selected to see my page only?
I can see the red pencil and paper. That's what I can see. I don't know about others, but
Yeah, that's what I want to show you. So do you
oh, okay.
see
Sorry,
me
I thought.
making marks on that?
No, actually, we can see the yellow pencil. That
Yeah, yeah, not the red
that
pencil, the yellow pencil.
yeah, she says the red pencil is what she says. We all can see the yellow pencil.
That's what
Oh,
I can see on the red.
are there other frames, Rachna? You can pin that frame in which I'm showing, I've shared the image.
Um, in the frame from where I'm on the Zoom call, but I can see the red and the black pencil.
Yes, so this one, right? Have you pinned this frame, this image?
No.
Have you spotlit it for
Uh,
yourself?
nope.
Rachna,
Yeah.
Okay.
can you check if you are in speaker view or gallery view?
No, no, no. Actually, on the top of the Zoom, like on top of it, there's one small tab sort of a thing that says meeting, and then there's the other one that says Aditi Dio screen. You click on the Aditi Dio screen
Uh, I
on
can
the top.
see on
It's
the top
almost like
speaker,
in the middle.
speaker gallery, multi speaker. That's what I can see. I'm gonna
No.
just maybe leave and join again, Aditi.
Yes, okay. I'll wait.
Okay, I can see this now.
Yay. Okay, good.
Sorry.
All right. So just to go over, this was the original square, the pink one, and then the blue line that I drew to show you the middle of the pencil. And then I've divided the square into thirds. And this is now also going to help me mark the point where the pencil is sharpened up to and then how far it extends outward. We can keep doing this and keep dividing the space further and further and further into smaller bits on the vertical and horizontal side and keep getting more and more markers. Like, for example, we need to know what the shadow is. It's a little below half point. So I'll share this image with you and I'll help you draw with this. So one thing is, it's very easy to do this when I'm showing to you this on screen. But how do you look at something and draw these lines? What I want you to know is that these lines are like what I'm explaining to you right now is like it's like the showing you the alphabet of measuring things. It's not the only thing that you do. It's not the only way in which you can measure. So you must have seen the typical image of an artist holding a pen or holding their thumb and measuring stuff with their thumb because they are using their thumb as a unit. And if you want to measure anything with any one element, you use that as a unit. And then if I want to measure the size of my screen, or proportions, I will use my pencil at the same distance, which often you can't use one distance from here and the other one from there because that is going to change everything. So you keep uh, if it's a very far off element, then you can hold your hand out straight because that is one steady measurement. If not, then keep your elbow in one place and make sure that this distance is the same so that you can measure this in units. And that way, closing one eye, I will get the measurement horizontally and then I will get measurement vertically. If I take the measurement in the smaller direction, and then I use that as a unit for the longer measurement, then the smaller measurement becomes the unit. So I am able to measure my rectangle in terms of the smaller unit. So my width is going to be 1.5 times the smaller unit. The longer is going to be 1.5 times the smaller. That helps regardless of whatever you are seeing, because then you're not limited to centimeters or inches. It's all about proportion. So in this case, suppose you have a pencil lying down. What we have to do always is to flatten our perspective when drawing. So close one eye, you tend to lose your depth perception and you start seeing things in vertical and horizontal. And with that, you can start using your fingers. You can start doing that thing like we always see in Hindi film directors going and doing. And that will give you the frame in which you can fit your object. Okay, so in the later batches, not batches, in the later modules, we will have a lot of drawing also, but I thought this is a good point to show you how to do drawing. Without drawing, it is like just, putting lipstick on a pig. It doesn't matter how good your painting is. If your basic structure is just not going to be good, it's always very dissatisfying. Okay, sharing that image. Just give me a second. Okay, so I've just shared the image on the group. So the first square will help you to decide on the size of your object. If you wanted this size, you make your square about this big. If you wanted the whole page, you have to make your square about this big. Knowing that 1/3 of the pencil is outside of the square, you can position the square to the left so that you have some portion left to the right. This is the best way to visualize all your elements. So starting about an inch away from the top and the bottom, just make a square with very light lines. Don't spend too much time on making this square. That is not the point. But do use your pencil to measure whether you're getting the square accurately or not, more or less. Now we draw the other line. So you don't need to draw the 45-degree line. That I had drawn only to figure out what is 45 degree. But we can draw a line to, or actually keep a finger so that you know that the line you're making to cut the vertical side in half is indeed at half mark. And then add a quarter on top. And this is the point which you connect to the bottom left and get the center of your pencil. Take it all the way up so that it comes to the same height as the height of your square. And you don't even need that 1/3 measurement, because once our line has come to the top over here, that's all you need to now make the end of the pencil right here. But how far is this curve going to go? That can be determined by making the mark between these 2 points, which is one side of the pencil, and the other side is about the same or maybe a little shorter. See, it becomes so much easier to draw this rather than just visualizing it on paper. Of course, that is a valid way also. You're perfectly fine just looking at it, knowing the angle, or just assuming the angle and making the drawing. That's perfectly fine. But eventually you will be able to see these things on paper and then draw accordingly without making all these guidelines. All right, now at 1/3 mark, now for this 1/3 also, it's really just very simple. Just see how much each of these sections is. As long as it's equal, that works. Now here we will make a very shallow round at this bottom where the pencil is sharpened. Go right up, and at this junction also, just beyond this junction is where we have that metal attachment to the pencil, the clamp that will keep the eraser in place. And beyond that, again, it's an arbitrary distance you can keep. But as you go further and further, this roundness, this round shape starts becoming even rounder. Let's draw a line for the center or the division between those two flat edges of the pencil. And then just make these slightly skewed C shape, joining those with a round shape like this. I think I've skewed them a little more than necessary. And then comes the pencil. So now the tip of the pencil, you can just make a slightly wobbly line, and then the graphite is made. Now here's a technique that you can use for like a legitimate painting as well. The pattern that you see on the on this crimp over here is quite simple. Right in the center you have a double line in which you have vertical lines. So I am making these vertical lines in pencil dark enough so that I will not need to erase them. And then you have these contour lines around some parts, and then you have dimples in which are again just C-shaped dimples. I don't want to spend too much time in drawing the details, but I just feel that you won't enjoy your painting if the drawing won't look good. So spend a little time on making the silhouette of the crimp so that it really looks like it has been crimped on, because this is the part that keeps the pencil and the eraser together beyond just gluing them. And the more details you make in a picture, the more distances become clearer. So I'm going to leave all the pencil marks the way they are so that you can see even afterwards how much I've also had to go all around and change the design or adapt the line to make it fit what I see in the photo reference. Even this line, I've brought it a little higher. Now we have to draw the shadow. So you can draw an angle from the tip of the pencil coming to maybe about 5 o'clock, and at that point from the middle of this sharpened wooden part you will draw a line to get the V shape that we see in the image that goes right up through the picture. Remember that our shadow is slightly bigger, or let's make it the same size as the pencil. So you measure this and then you measure that and you get the edge of the shadow. Draw a line right to the end, and because the light source is in such a way that it does not see or go around the round part of the pencil, the end of the pencil we see as a flat edge. But it does not come from the further end, it comes from the part where the pencil stops becoming a round shape. In fact, in the photograph, you'll see that the shadow emerges at this point where the crimp and the eraser meet. When you are seeing this, the angle that the shadow is making, look at it very objectively as which direction the line goes. 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. Look at it that way. Don't try to see how horizontal it is with respect to the pencil, and don't look at it as a shadow at all. All right, so this is potentially a place where you can use underpainting. Let's give it a shot. You can make an underpaint color that's a gray color, and I make that using burnt umber, cobalt blue or ultramarine blue, and black. So keep your rag handy. That will help control the amount of medium. This is cobalt blue. I'm just adding it in the blue section. And we are not making...
What are you using, Aditi?
Sorry?
Which colors are you using?
Yeah, this is cobalt blue and burnt umber and black. And remember how I have requested you to add colors. Don't add into one big puddle. Add them next to each other, and then a third color will be at the intersection. So you can always check where your shade is going. Otherwise, you'll end up just adding more and more color to correct one big puddle. It just makes everything look... You may get a large quantity of the wrong color. So we are making this not too dark, and you can see how dark your color is by just moving it around on the palette. Now this is the shade and the consistency I want, but let me try and show you a consistency that is deeper. So I'll take the same color, which is not very watery. This is black. To that I'm going to add a little burnt umber. And even if I start moving it in a larger area, you can see how thick it is. So it goes and sits right on top of that same area. Very dense. These are the same colors, but a different consistency and a different quantity of pigment with water. So I could have the same thickness of paint. Like I could move this paint and it would come and sit exactly like the darker paint, but it just has less quantity of pigment in it. So I don't necessarily need a wash, but I need a consistency of paint that will not have too much pigment in. They are the same feel when they go on paper. One has more pigment, one has less. So I want you to see how this will work. I am going to put one layer of this pigment, very watery. This is going to be watery as well. And this one I'm going to apply across the bottom half of the pencil through and through, except the crim, and also in the shadow. So this is how underpainting will work. I'll go through and press the brush down so that you get a quick application, also into the eraser, not into the crimp because it has got distinct highlights. And using the same consistency, same medium, everything same, I'm also going to paint the shadow part. Remember that this is just staining the paper. So don't go over and over it again. And this is also an example of a study in monochromatic colors. Actually, monochromatic is enough because that would mean colors. Taking one single color, usually a gray or a sepia or a brown tone, you can make a monochromatic impression just by changing these tones. And instead of those layers, if you put color, then it starts becoming a colored picture. Now we are going to wait for this to dry. And in the meantime, we are going to draw other stuff. Now let's try drawing that tumbler. Is everyone done with the painting? Make it quick. If you're painting more than 2 minutes, you're probably over painting. It's no longer an underpainting. Okay. Moving on to the tumbler. The tumbler is fairly simple. It is just a cylinder. But again, just to practice our proportioning. Suppose I were to draw a square around this. How do I know the proportions of this tumbler? Start with a square. Already you can see that the base is narrower than the mouth. Then I will start splitting it. Break it in half vertically, break it in half horizontally. I think this might be too tall. And now when you have the sides going slightly higher, the center of the tumbler coming low, and you have this round shape at the bottom, how do you know how to proportion further? All you need to know is what point you need at or where you need to bring a curved line to. That's all you need to know, and that can be figured out fairly easily by breaking up spaces even further. Now we can tell that the bottom of the tumbler is less than 1/4 of that square, right? This line, this length is not 1/4. Oh, I don't know why this is happening. Yeah, so this is less than 1/4, right? And how much less? A third less than 1/4. I'm sorry for all these weird measurements, but this is the only and easiest way I've found to get our proportions right. How tall is the center? I'll draw another line. This is the center. And that too is about maybe 1/4 of the bottom half less. You get what I mean? So if I were to divide this,
3/4 also.
yeah, so if I were to divide this further into 4 parts, the bottom half, so this will be in eighths, 3/8 of the bottom of the square becomes the bottom. But you get a point, and from there making a curve up to here will become so much easier. Now the other part where we also need to know the curve, it will be the top. So let's start dividing that into half and into quarters. And there we have it. So the top curve is slightly rounder towards the foreground. That's this part, and less on the top. See, this is where we make mistakes, where we will make the oval perfectly on both sides of that horizontal line, and that might not work. Okay, I'm sharing this with you. Make of it what you would want. Oh, I'm sorry. And this is again not the only way you can measure proportions. There you can use your own ideas to figure out what proportion works for you and what is the right measurement and what are the right parameters also for that matter. And if you want to, you don't really even need to make those measurements. So I'm making my square align with the top of this square, the pencil square. But I won't make the square that long or wide because I want the tumbler to be just about this big. First, make the mechanical divisions. So the vertical, horizontal, divide the horizontal into half, divide the bottom half into thirds. So 2/3 of the way down, this is the length of the tumbler on the side, and 3/8 of the way up, this is the length of the tumbler in the center. Use your pencil to make these measurements. It's pretty easy. And then from here, first make a horizontal line at the center base and then curve this line very smoothly. So for this curve, do not hold your pencil so close and try to make this curve like this. It is a nightmare. Hold your pencil far away and let it glide. Likewise at the top as well. The top curve will be shallower than the bottom curve anyway. And also it will be a little rounder towards the bottom of that oval itself than the top of that oval. Now also we need to pull the base of the tumbler inward a little bit. This is optional, but this will give us the right shape. The moment you do this, you get a sharp corner at the two sides at the base, which you need to round out to get a more pleasing, believable shape of the tumbler. Okay, wasn't this easy? This is so much easier than just trying to imagine that proportion on paper without any guidance.
Aditi, the measurements you were taking, was it with Freeform on Mac or something else?
No, this is Zoom itself has tools which you
Oh,
can use to
lovely.
yeah. So when you share, then you have some place you have there's like a small corner icon in the corner, which I think has a pencil or something.
Okay.
Once you click that, an entire toolbox opens in which you have
Right.
various tools. All right, now if you look at our tumbler, it's all grays. So we can use the exact same gray we have used in the underpainting. You can technically paint even something like this in other colors like a blue or a green to make your picture more vibrant. But today we are just going to use grays. And first thing that you will notice are the highlights, which you need to leave blank. This particular highlight and its corollary on the inside of the tumbler are almost completely white, so we don't want any paint there. After that, you will see layers of gray. So look at the lightest gray. That is the layer that will go first. After that, you will see slightly darker shades. Those will go second. And then if you see any more shapes in that, those will go third. And each of these layers will go after the first layer has at least become damp, if not completely dry. How do you know when to apply the paint? Wherever you see a sharp edge like this on the right, this is dry paint. So you have a wet on dry effect for wherever the line is sharp. And wherever you have lines that are fuzzy like this, that there is a demarcation, but it is not very sharp, those lines are all wet on wet. So many of these lines are wet and these will be sharp. Now, there's another technique by which you can lift paint, and I don't do much of that, but I just need to show you. that you can apply one big fat blob of paint on this section, and then using a tissue you run your tissue's edge all the way down while the paint is wet and be able to pick this up also. And in picking up, it will leave these slightly rough edges in which the paint will come and merge and give you a very nice edge. So you get all sorts of effects like that. But we are going to do a combination of wet on wet and wet on dry. So first and foremost, identify your highlights, make your pencil marks along the highlights and paint the entire tumbler one flat gray shape. In that, we are going to also add a few dark shapes in the form of this shadow and then leave it. Okay, so this is going to be a little bit quick but not fast. So don't be in a rush. Now, the moment you know that you have to make a wet on wet paint, you need to use a big fat brush because you need enough medium so that your paint does not dry too soon. We are going to use the exact same color, the same consistency is fine because then you are not in any danger of making your picture too dark. Work with lighter consistencies and more layers than darker consistencies and fewer layers because you lose control. Now in your tumblers, just check that the top oval on the corners, you've not pinched the corners, that there is a certain roundness and there could be a certain thickness of the metal itself also because it's a proper edge. In the center of the right hemisphere, just make lines which are parallel to the center and one thin line or a strip of lines on the left, which is somewhere around the center. We don't have to be too accurate here. And a similar thickness line on the inside of the tumbler, but on the left face, and again a corollary of this highlight on the right. The distances are pretty much the same. Check how much paint you have. This is obviously not enough paint for me to put it on the paper and expect it to remain damp for the next part also. So I am making more medium. And pretty much like a wash, I'm going to apply, but if you really want to be careful about it, there is this nice highlight on the rim. Don't paint the rim if you can help it. The inside edge of the rim, just leave it unpainted or haphazardly painted so that not everything is covered. Using vertical strokes, bring your paint downward. Press a little bit. And avoid painting the highlights. I nearly painted my own highlight, but I caught it in time. Remember, we need to keep this a little damp. And while this is damp, we can take a slightly deeper color. So it's the same shades, but not very watery this time. And you can make your color strips from the bottom to top. And let the color sit and do whatever it's doing. Don't force it. My center has dried, and I'm not going to bother about it too much. Now don't fiddle with it too much. We are going to be painting in layers, so we can come right back and paint. And also, if you feel, no, don't do it, don't feel anything. After you have finished painting one part and you've dropped in the color, just let it dry, let it do its own thing. So our color is going to be flowing in different places. Now I tried adding some extra color on the top and bottom, and this is going to become a cloud. I know it because there was no need to do this. I just did it. Let that cloud be, it's okay. And to encourage you to not paint more or to discourage you from painting more and doing more on the tumbler, I'm swiftly moving to the pencil. Here I am going to use a gamboge and paint the entire pencil, including that underpainting. The whole point of the underpainting is to give us a shadow underneath the final color.
Is a thinner paintbrush now, Aditi?
Yes, this one is a thinner brush. So this is a number 4. Oh, sorry, this is a number 7. Okay, with a nice tip.
Okay.
But you can use, I guess, with brushes, the way I look at it, use a brush which will give you good coverage in that area. So let's say if I take a very thin brush, it's going to take me a long time to paint this, which means that the paint is going to keep drying as I go along, which means that the chances of me getting a patchy result are higher. So if you've got a medium-sized brush which has a good tip, you can paint fine areas also, but also it holds a lot more medium. So you don't have to keep dipping back and forth. You can just make long lines with this, and the brush will support you through.
This was a nice thing I learned today. I think I've used this before, but this going over with gamboge on gray
Huh.
gives color, shadow color.
Yeah, it's so cute. It just magically gives you a shadow.
Yeah.
You don't really have to do too much.
You don't have to create another color for that shade.
Exactly, yeah. And one might have to do that in other, if you were to make an acrylic painting out of it, you would probably create this illusion by changing the color a little bit for this section.
Hmm.
Okay, now for the eraser bit at the back, you can use a mix of scarlet and crimson and make a watery shade of that and apply that in exactly the same way. And this time, pull the color downward, because often the part where you pick up your brush, there's a little blob of paint that remains. Let that remain towards the bottom, because anyway we want there to be a shadow in that place.
For the eraser, what color did you use, Aditi?
I used a watery shade of crimson and
Scarlet.
scarlet, correct, yes. So let me give you the shades also. By the way, you can make or you can interpret colors any way you want to, huh? Like in some places, of course, the color is quite evident. Like this is a warm yellow, and the warm yellow that we have in our palette is gamboge. But this pink, I feel you could even achieve by mixing crimson with orange, or orange with light red or something like that. So there are many ways in which you can make certain shades. Huh?
That chart, yes.
Yes, yeah, in the chart
The
also.
chart, what we made, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, now for the wooden part of the pencil. I think my pencil has become too narrow and sharp, but that's okay. That's just an observation now. Here you can make, again, a very light shade of, I guess, light red. So wherever you see these pastel shades, don't immediately run to white, because that's not how watercolor works. We have a whole range of translucent, transparent, barely there shades you can get with just water. So I have some mixture over here that looks like a reddish brownish shade. This is, I think, burnt sienna, a little bit of yellow ochre, leftover stuff which I'm just picking and putting where I have that wooden part, and that is enough. That works.
It's 8:30.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, that's my.
I suddenly was wondering, do we have a male in class?
No, I need reminders every half an hour, otherwise
Yeah,
I'm stuck on.
that's okay. That's okay. Yeah, that's a good thing actually.
I forgot to pick up Aman once when he was a kid and he was waiting at the bus stop. Since then, I've had this.
Oh my God. Okay, that can be quite traumatic for all involved. Okay, so once this is done, again, let's leave the tip of the pencil for a bit, and using this same shadow gray color, here's how you can create interesting effects in the metal part. So like we have painted this tumbler, we can take the lightest shade and paint a few stripes across this crimp. And these stripes are, some places they are long and some places they run along the edge. So making it a more a pattern of gray rather than flat grays. I really enjoy making these little things because it suddenly gives your object so much more meaning, and all you've done is taken a bunch of grays and strategically put them along a line. So whenever you have an object in metal which has its own structure, like it's got lines or crimps or dots, and we draw those, our shadows are generally going to fall on one or the other side of that line itself. So all you need to do is just go over the same lines with your gray in layers, and you'll start seeing that metal. And the more contrast you increase, the more metallic it looks. A little bit of shadow in a few spaces. My eraser pink has flown so far into the metal crimp that I'm going to have to cover that up. Now at this stage also, if you feel that you need more shadow in the shadow area, this part I'm quite satisfied with. The eraser part I think is too light. You can add more gray there. So long as you keep it light, you can keep adding layers and layers and layers of gray. And for that matter, you can also increase the gray, a cast shadow, but I often will add a second layer of shadow closer to the object so that there is some depth even in the shadow. For painting, the rules change For photography, they don't have much of a choice, so they'll end up getting the shadows they get. All they can do is adjust the light and their angle. They play with what exists. We have far more control, but then also far more responsibility. The more options you have, the more you can get confused. Now, again, for the last bit, which is the tip of the pencil, this is the best. I love this. You can do the same thing even for like beaks of birds. Just take a deeper black or gray shade, make a line on one side, which is the highlight side, leave the highlight and make that same dark on the other side of the pencil, and you get a very convincing lead. My line has become a little too thick, but it's okay. It's like a very bulbous pencil. Okay, now here's the result of the tumbler. I have these clouds in the places where I impatiently try to add color, but it's perfectly okay. I should not fiddle with this. And this is layer 1. To this now more layers can come. So it's the same gray. You don't really need to increase the depth of color. Using this same gray, now we can add details. So I just want everyone to observe this. Don't paint while I'm painting because you might miss out on a few tips. So give me a couple of minutes. I just want to show you how to even this all out. So the first thing to do is make your inner edge firm. And once you've made that, you can use a slightly slim brush to go over some shadows on the inside of the tumbler, and you might also make lighter shadows in what we had marked as highlights. Then we take this line to the inside and you'll start seeing there are points at which your paint either hasn't reached or you've gone a little beyond. So you use this opportunity to start making everything even. There will be darker shadows along the corners. So I'm going to add color in the corners so that they start standing out. Make some part of the outer edge. So this outer edge bit, it does not come as a rim in the front, but we do see a little bit of the shadow and the highlight on the sides. Make only that. Don't bring a line inside of the edge, but we will make a line on the outside of the further edge because that shows that the metal has been folded in to create that rim. So everything beyond the first layer is observation and then application. Observation and application. You see something dark, put something dark. You see something light, you want to highlight that, put something dark next to it. Now even on the front, you can take a medium brush. This time not very watery paint, but you can use the same paint, the same shade. Don't keep it too watery. Look at how it is moving on the palette. And you can make more dark spots like that. And as usual, paint something less or paint something else. It's a wasted opportunity for depth if you paint exactly the same thing one on top of the other. All you'll successfully do is make everything equally dark. Here I'm adding one light shadow through the center. So this is like the bare basic minimum you can do. When you see steel tumblers made by artists, sometimes you look at them and you wonder, how am I seeing a tumbler in this? Why, when all I can see is paint being slapped around? Because we have to play with the illusion of objects. And finally, what I do to make this look more convincing as a hollow object is make a stroke like this, which creates a shadow on the inside. This does not exist in our photo reference, but this will give the painting a more convincing look.
Aditi, I know it didn't come with practice, but I think I'm struggling with the quantity of water, which on the palette it seems like it's sometimes enough or it's too much. But when I start painting, it just,
Not enough? Okay.
I mean, it just completely, there's no sense of what is the right
Quantity.
amount of water for the right, when you did that first light gray of wash on the pencil when you just started. It looked like the color was right, but then I didn't realize there was too much water. So, that whole thing gets thrown off with too much water. The shade may be right, but there's too much water. And I know it may be coming from practice, but in case if there's some trick around that.
Yeah, there is a trick. Okay, so one is the amount of water you have in your medium on the palette. And you can, sometimes we need a lot of that, so you might have a quantity that is ready. But the brush is very important. When you pick that quantity in your brush, the size of the brush makes a difference to what is going to appear on paper. Having said that, now I don't even bother thinking about which brush I'm picking. If I have a fat brush, I'll pick less medium, or I'll just squeeze some medium out because I know how much I need on paper. So that one bit is true, that the more you paint, the more you start seeing a surface for what it needs, and you pick up the tool and then you manipulate it to what you need to do there. But there are, I mean, if I want to give you some kind of a formula to work with, uh, you in I so the area that you are painting, like I said, I used a number 7 to paint it, but I also needed very sharp edges. So look for a nice round brush which has a nice sharp edge. And when you're loading your brush, you can either load a lot, place the brush or the medium on paper, see how much medium it is dropping. It will sometimes drop a lot, and you know instantly that okay, this might be too much. Take your brush off, wipe it on your rag, and then use that medium and drag it across. So
Okay.
that is how you start seeing whether what you have is enough or not. Now, in the event that you paint the whole thing and the medium bubbles up a little bit, what's going to happen is that as it dries, firstly, it's going to take a longer time to dry. Then, as it dries, it's going to leave a cloud around it. Leave it. Don't do anything at that point. Come back in with a smaller brush, lesser medium, and after it has dried, go over that all over again. In that process, all the pigments along the edge will start, I guess, dissolving again, get activated, and come back and give you a smoother finish. So, these two things will help you to figure out or at least work with what you have. And the third thing I can recommend is keep a rough paper handy. Just make your first stroke on the rough paper to figure out the color, the medium, amount of medium, water, spread, all of those things in the first few shades. Once you know that, repeat that stroke and paint, or if you've got enough, just paint the rest.
Yeah, that helps. Thanks.
Okay. All right. Now for the beetle. This is going to be a quick job. And then we have to quickly attempt the Coke bottle. So we'll do the drawing of both these objects together. Beetle is very easy. I've used the beetle just as a reference. We don't even have to make our beetle look exactly like a portrait of the given beetle. But it's a good reference to know where all the different elements will fall. And the Coke bottle, I'm going to show you a technique with which you can sketch the bottle and paint it with quick strokes. We have very little time, so you're not going to get too much painting time also. I might go 10 minutes over, but not more than that. Because this is one way in which you can practice watercolor better than trying to make a finished painting. It takes a long time and very tedious to do a finished painting, and you don't learn too much making a finished painting. You will just find yourself more and more frustrated. But if you do these sketching, watercolor sketching exercises enough, you will start becoming so much more familiar with the medium that your projects, even these sketches start becoming your projects. They start looking as good. So here's the beetle. And this is a simple enough shape. We will make an oval shape at the top, an oval at the bottom, or just make a full oval and then convert the head by dividing again a quarter of the oval into the head and the rest into the body. What we want is to show these highlights. Leave a little negative spot, then also show the shadow going from a light red or a bright red to a deeper red towards the bottom of the bug. Now, in our brains, we do not see this. We see only red and black. That is how our brains perceive this insect. But our eyes are capturing everything. They see that there's a slight gray to white area, which is the highlight, which tells us that this is going to be something really hard. And then as you go lower, if I were to take a color pick from the top and a color pick from the bottom, they're going to be two different shades altogether. But in our brains, we think of this only as red. So, for the moment, forget the legs and just make the bug. So we can make an oval. Ovals are not a basic shape because they can be very long, very wide. So I'm going to ask you this time to just observe the insect, see how narrow it is, and then draw the bottom. And at about 1/4 of the way of this visualized oval, you will make the wings and the neck. and then complete that shape ahead with a V shape that breaks out the top, the head and thorax, I think, and the mouth parts on top. So it's just like pebbles being stacked one on top of the other. There's a little edge on the wings, almost like a little edge on the helmet, only on the sides. And for the legs, now here's a trick. Don't bother drawing the whole leg. Draw only lines. So one small line, a slightly bigger line, and a third line. That's it. If we spend so much or too much time in drawing each little part of a bug's legs, that's it. That's the end of your career as an artist. Just draw the basic line that goes through and through. And from here, while we are painting, we are just going to make some extra lines which are going to look like the bug's foot parts. Okay, now we have a division in the center, and we will mark these highlights with very light lines. These lines have to be so light that once a color comes around it, these will vanish into those colors. So a shallow U shape on the head, two white dots which are going to be left unpainted, a very sweet petal-like shape on the shoulders of the thorax, two white marks on the wings at the junction here. There is a beautiful black teardrop shape also around the highlight, and then almost like wobbly heart shapes on the top and oval on the side. So this oval on the side is really important. This shape is going to reveal that this object is circular. If you make a round shape over here, it will look like this is a flat ladybug. Now here we are not going to do any underpainting, although we can create a shadow effect at the base exactly like how we did with the pencil. Actually, let me just show that to you. So I will make another one over here in which we can use underpainting and see which one works best. I'll use I guess a 4 number should do. No, 2 number is fine to make the underpainting. Now remember the different techniques that we used, right? Start off with water in the middle. This is how I'm starting out, with just plain water in the middle, and I'm going to make a wash out of this. I'm going to introduce the gray into the water, deepen the gray a little bit, more concentrated shade, and pull it down. Now when going in, this color needs to be slightly darker because it is going to dry and become 30% lighter at least. This is a very involved underpainting. Depending upon the topic and the artist, an artist could just slap in a gray shade also and make it look like an underpainting.
When you say underpainting, it pretty much means it starts from the bottom to top, is it?
How do you mean?
So underpainting meaning? Well, I don't understand. What does the word underpainting have?
Okay, yeah. So underpainting is when you add a color before the rest of the colors. Usually they are shadows, or yeah, mostly just shadows, or something that is going to indicate depth. which also comes from shadows. So you will make, let me show you some pictures from the past in which, because you're going to cover the painting with a lot of washes from the top, you want something that is not going to move too much, but you can't put a shadow afterwards, so you'll put a shadow before. Where
Okay.
are my shadows? I'll show you. There's a lot of this I do in animals, and they're okay, somewhere they're here. So feathers of animals, you cannot do much if you don't do that before. Okay, looks like my animals are responding. Yeah, while you all are painting the other stuff, I'll show you. Huh? Just give me 2 minutes. Okay, here they've found them. Yeah, so see this part?
Hmm.
I wanted to paint a texture on top of it, and I can't paint the grays after I've painted the fine texture. So I give this an underpainting.
Okay, got it.
This bird did not need too much color on top, but had I needed color, then that underpainting would have helped me get the same depth.
Hmm.
Okay, now for the main bug, let's go with the scarlet first. And we are going to introduce burnt sienna and then burnt umber into the body. So we need to prepare this beforehand. I'm going to put scarlet over here.
And use the number 2 brush itself for Aditi.
No, for this one, I'm using a number 7 because it's a larger area, but my paint is going to be slightly thicker.
Okay.
And burnt umber as well. These paints should not be too watery. We have to match the consistency. So it helps to take some paint out in the palette. Don't take it directly from the cake. And because these colors are all in the same category, they're all reds, you don't need to wash your brush in between, which means that you carry forward some of the previous color. It's like holding hands. The previous color will hold hands with the new color, and so on and so forth. So there isn't any distinct division between the two.
Which two colors again, Aditi?
It's scarlet, burnt
Okay.
sienna, and burnt umber.
Okay.
Okay, so maybe you can observe this first and then you can paint, because I'll just show you how this will work best. Start off with leaving that gap for those 2 dots. You can paint over everything that is going to become black. Now keep going in all directions. Don't just paint from one side fully, because we want all of this to come down together. That is why you paint over the black. It's almost like making a wash. And as you come further and further to the middle, you can now start without washing the brush. Just add burnt sienna. Start adding burnt sienna to the middle. So I can see my paint is drying here. It's going to become very streaky. I have to add a little more water. Smooth strokes all the way. And finally add burnt umber. Oh, it's not blending. So do not go back too much. I am going to get a few streaks here, I know that, but fortunately I'm going to get a black dot on top of it, so it's not going to matter. Can you see how it is looking like this is rounded and it's on flat paper? It's amazing. So in this case, if we wanted to put a cast shadow, which is a shadow, an object cast onto a surface like this one, we could have used that also as underpainting. Okay, making the same thing here. This time I'm not using any of those colors. I'm just painting a flat scarlet through and through. The effect will be the same.
It's 9 o'clock.
Okay, so 10 more minutes, and this part I'm just going to demonstrate now. So if you want, you can keep your pens, pencils, brushes down and observe this painting and paint it afterwards. So since it's just a demonstration, those of you who need to leave can leave, and I will continue painting this. It may take 10 minutes, it may take 15 minutes, but it will be part of the recording, so you can watch it afterwards as well. All right, so now this is a painting sketch, and for that, we're not going to really make the lines too specific. They are going to be just hinting at something like a bottle. So make your lines as casually and as easily as you can. They can go all over the place. They can be very wobbly. They can go into each other also. And in order for that to not look too messy, make your lines very light. So in order to make your lines light, hold your pencil further away than you normally do, and do not draw lines like this. Hold your pencil far and draw piecemeal lines, but make them strong and confident. In a sketch, you will have guidelines as well as finished lines sitting next to each other. That is what I would define a sketch as. So you will, if you are drawing starting from a rectangle, the rectangle will be visible. If you are drawing using an oval, that will also be visible. And all the construction lines remain in the painting right to the end. So I am using my pencil to make these different shapes and also demarcating the lines for the different colors. If you have the time, you can write the Coca-Cola, but I would say just omit it for the moment and see past that. That is also an exercise, how to edit out stuff that you don't want to see. And definitely mark the highlights. So this is a great example for underpainting. It's not as if we are just using one color, but I'm going to use 2-3 different brushes, 2-3 different colors, and also keep it very casual, the painting. So let's start with our shadow shade and drop it in sections, carefully avoiding the highlights. Now this is a number 12 brush, but look at the tip. It has such a fine tip. It really helps me to lay down color in big sections of the painting, small sections. And because this is such a light gray, you can confidently put down the first bits of shadow like we did for the tumbler. Rest assured that this is going to dry up and become much lighter. So if you feel that you've goofed up, you can always come back and correct it with a deeper shade. So there goes that theory that watercolor cannot be corrected. The need for correction starts reducing because you start seeing things differently. So this is watercolor painting sketching that I recommend everyone should do. Just take a pencil, quickly draw a sketch and start putting down the whole painting in terms of just one color or in quick brush strokes. Right, now while this is drying, I can go back to the bug. And this time round, I'm just going to use a plain black to paint the rest. Now you can see that this is pretty patchy, but that patchiness is not going to affect the three-dimensionality of our bug. Here the color needs to be fairly thick, so I'm using a thin brush and I'll also show you how you can make the edges fuzzy. The the highlight uh, on the black part is not like a white blob. So how do you make it look fuzzy edged? These two are white patches, but the highlight is not. So to fuzz up the edge, while the paint is wet, you can take a damp brush and just go around the edge like that in a quick stroke so that you pull in some of the paint, just hydrating the edge a little. And it starts becoming fuzzy. It helps if you do this while the paint is wet, otherwise it just destroys the existing edge also. Okay, then the mouth parts, and then we have the marks on the bug themselves. Now these also I would make them in two parts. So first I would put a gray over there, and very quickly, this paint should not be too wet. And then for the limbs, I usually make an outline like that because these limbs are also often made of a hard exoskeleton. So they would have some amount of highlight, and just use your brush to paint the whole leg. Okay, moving on to the Coke bottle. Now here literally you have to go with your gut. I'm going to be mixing a bunch of colors just how I see it. So a little bit of burnt sienna and orange for the body. And now that I have put that underpainting, I don't even need to think too much. Maybe a little bit of scarlet will also help. The number 12 is a better brush for this. So as I'm moving, I'm changing the color. And all I need to do is not paint the highlights. Burnt umber, scarlet, maybe a little bit of black for the deeper sections. And here I'm literally painting on the fly. I can see that it has become dark. So I will drop in a black in certain sections while the paint is still wet. So this is the brush manipulation that I was talking to you about. I need a thin line here. But as I come down, instead of making a shape with the brush, I just press on the brush and I get the shape that I want. So it's a little more efficient for application of the color itself. Now in this again, my color on top has dried. So what I wanted to become blended. I come back in with a different shade, paint over it again. Maybe not all of them, but in a few sections, yes. And this color is now pure scarlet. Because I have an undertone of another shade, I don't really need to match the color anymore. I've just put whatever color I need for vibrancy in this case. And slowly you will see that transparency emerge. The proportions are pretty off. I won't be able to fit a Coca-Cola in the middle over here, but I'm loving how the transparency is shaping up. So just so you know that we do cover all of these topics in everything, every other subject that we are going to do. Like next month, when we do food, there will be part of this that will be covered. The whole point of having the various modules is to show you how to work with watercolor in literally everything that you want to paint. Now I will make some more defining lines using a slightly deeper black or darker gray. It's still going to be gray. And while I'm doing this as a 10-minute exercise, it's not a 10-minute exercise. You can take your time thinking about how to do it, practice lines, colors, everything beforehand or on a rough sheet right next to you so that you feel confident about your colors. But it still has to look like a sketch. You know what I mean? Our idea of a sketch is that it has to finish fast. Not really so. The sketch should be made with lines which are brief, but they must be well thought out, well contemplated. Okay, so I can go on for another 10 minutes, but I think this is good enough to give you an idea of how to paint briefly. But I'm also going to show you a picture that we made in the Wednesday class, which did the same bit, application and still life. And I'll share the link to this video also, where we did another metallic object in copper, the same pencil. And this pencil was not done using underpainting. So the effects may be similar. It's a good study to do. We put a second color coat on top of this. And here it's all underpainted. So you could try the two techniques also. And the lobster was the sketch. So they did not do a transparent object. They did a shiny crustacean. But I'll encourage you to watch this video. I'll share this with you also. So this is just the beginning of watercolor basics. Though we finished 4 weeks of it, it just requires you to practice a lot more and think of more topics. But hopefully you guys will continue for the rest of the modules also to get in that practice.